Yo, folks, what's up? It's your boy DJ L7, and today I have a special guest. I'm actually quite excited to meet. Well, actually, I'm gonna let him introduce himself. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Michael with evolvingseeds.com, a solutions-focused activism network and organization. How you doing?
Doing great. So I'd like to This is part of the activist interview series where I get to know a lot of people that I meet for the first time. I run them through this online activist interview series to get to know them better. So the first question I'm going to ask is, everybody starts. This is actually an activist-related channel, right? I call myself the #1 street activist. It's all about
Right.
activism. So, what started you on your journey to become an activist? Right? Everybody has their beginning, right? Was it ecology stuff? Was it right? What turned you into activist?
When
You're
I
not born
was
activist
seven,
that way.
well, when I was 4 or 5 years old, I saved up 100 pennies, and I thought that, or excuse me, 700 pennies, and I thought it was so much, and I found out it was $7, but I went to cash it in, and I cashed it in, and when we were on the way back home, uh, I saw what I found out to be later a homeless person or an unhoused
What do you mean
individual.
cash it in? You turned them into a dollar bill?
Yes, I tried
Okay,
to turn the
okay,
700 pennies into $7, and I did.
okay.
Um,
Just want to
but
understand.
I wound up seeing this individual standing in the street, and I don't know why I had never noticed before, but at this particular time I noticed, and I was like, "Why is that person standing there, Mom?" And she said that he is homeless. He doesn't have a home, and I was like, it just intuitively, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm learning how big the earth is, I'm learning how geography is, I'm learning other things about how that's just so not okay. And then you fast forward 3 years, and my brother was born, and that's more importantly what informed my activism. He was born with cerebral palsy and epilepsy and microcephalus. And I quickly became aware that beneficial treatments and cures and technologies were being withheld, uh, outright snuffed out a lot of times, and kind of disseminated to mankind at somebody else's whims. And that pissed me off like eternally, like on a soul level. I was like 7. So that kind of blunt force trauma essentially propelled me, and I have never stopped or looked back. It's been this way ever since, and it's just been getting more and more concise and precise and focused. And now we're in a good position to present certain topics to the world.
Okay, so you became aware at a young age. What was the first kind of activist thing that you did?
I would go out and I would ask my mom, could we go shopping? Well, first, I would start to like sell different things. I would sell like some of my Nintendo games. I would sell candy. I watched a lot of 80s movies, and in the 80s movies, the main character always knew how to get his. And so I kind of like Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell. I would like make me some money, and I'd be like, Mom, let's go get some food. And then I would go hand that food out. And because it wasn't that much money, it wasn't that much food to hand out. But that's where it really started. And the look on people's faces, I guess, to see a younger person, um, that young, 8, 9 years old, intent on not just providing them with assistance, but actually indulging in the essence of who they are while I'm dealing with them. Because a lot of times activists and activism is kind of vacant. It's like, oh, we're helping you right now because you're the thing to help. You're the thing to help right now. That's what we're doing. But a lot of times it's lost that they are people and that they're people in need. So that's how I started to present, and then rapidly it started to become more intersectional, and I started to see that just by interacting with people and providing assistance, I could interact with them to change some of their political views and their so-called political ideologies. I could change their sexist and racist ideologies through these interactions and through the process of them seeing that people like me are even doing it. So, if you want to change the world, you got to change yourself. You got to be the example, that type of thing.
Okay, so 80s, right? Yeah, that's going to be about 30, 40 years ago, right? So you're in your 40s, maybe
I'm
50s.
40 now this year.
Okay, so the thing is that, right, that's a long time as an activist. What are you most proud of achieving in, or maybe it's a couple things, right? But what are like your most biggest accomplishments as an activist?
Number one on the top of that list would be the care that I was able to provide my brother for over 30 years. And after that, um, I I was featured, myself and a friend of mine, Natalie Ruiz. We were featured on the Empire Files with Abby Martin
Oh, I
when we
like
went
Abby
to
Martin.
Houston.
Yeah, but now there's some things going
The
on. But
look
yeah,
on your face, he's
she
like,
had a
"Oh, I
cool
like
show.
Abby Martin." Yeah.
She's kind of cool, but
We went to
we
yeah,
got nervous about some things lately.
we
But yeah,
went to Houston during Hurricane Harvey, and um, to help out with the hurricane, and we were able to raise over, I think it was $32,000 in just
oh
14 or
damn,
15 days. Yeah, and that's the most amount of money we've ever been able to raise up until then and since then. But we raised that money, and I was just driving the whole time, just getting us from where we were supposed to be, um, from one place to another. But when we went there, and Abby Martin is so versed in so much activism and so many avenues and parts of activism and journalism. So she has a very specific and unique take and a specific lane. And when she basically got a hold of the fact somehow that we had created a Houston autonomous relief site where people could donate, and that we had raised the money, and that's what prompted her to contact us. And then Mike Prisner, who is her producer and boyfriend or husband, he is the guy that you see yelling at George Bush everywhere he goes. He's wearing like a really nice suit, and he's like, you unalive my friends, George. Mr. President, you killed my friends, Mr. President. You lied about why we went in Iraq. You lied about why we went in Afghanistan. You're a liar. But he's always there. They're a couple, and they make a lot of content together. And he was the producer that contacted us, and I didn't even believe it. Nobody else that I was dealing with at the time, none of the other activist organizations, Altruist Kitchen Relief, Women's Defense League, none of these other people who knew who Abby Martin was. And then I was like, they said Abby Martin wants to meet you guys. I was like, no way. But it was true, but it's available on YouTube. It's called Decentralized Relief Efforts in Houston
I
during Hurricane
appreciate
Harvey. It's
Abby
some
Martin's
long title.
intensity. She's a fun watch. She's an intense
Right.
person. Yeah,
Yeah, like she interviewed Peter Joseph, Immortal Technique, Jacques Fresco.
right. We're
So
talking more about Abby Martin, which is cool. Like, I'm a fan of hers in a way. But we're really focusing on you, right? Yeah. So I know it's
no,
cool
I
that
know
being next to her, but
that's
okay.
my
So okay,
that
go
was
ahead.
my yeah. You're right. That's the reason why I went into it, because I am very proud of it. And then we were just featured. She actually asked us how we develop these autonomous groups and these decentralized groups, and I was very proud not only to be able to be there for assistance during Hurricane Harvey, but that it was recognized. So that's why I put it as one of my highest activism achievements, because it was actually recognized on a broader scale. And then after that, I would say the formation of evolvingseeds.com, because we have put an extensive amount of information in a very concise and very focused space. And this isn't to sway people's religious beliefs. It's not even to get them to understand a very specific truth, essentially, which is that, excuse me, no matter what religion you practice, no matter what politics you follow or what politics you have, and what socioeconomic system you advocate, if your socioeconomic system, religion, or etc., does not have and obtain and respect, consent, and sustainability, then these systems are oppressive and de facto by their very nature.
Okay,
So
I
that's
actually have a
where,
couple of questions at this point. I'm sorry to interrupt.
please,
Yeah. Okay.
no, yeah,
So the thing is, by the way, I just want to throw in a little comment. By the way, I did go check out evolvingseeds.com, and
thank you.
I've been an activist for a long time. I saw that you were actually had a bunch of activists that you were supporting, and that takes a certain level of depth. So I do actually understand, right, that you're actually out there supporting other activists. You're
Right.
creating. We're going to ask about the intentional communities in a moment, but I know it's a big part of your work. But I actually do respect that there's a depth to your activism that is not really most actors that are as deep as yourself are not really talked about so much. So I do appreciate that. I think it's definitely worth looking into evolvingseeds.com. Now, going back to one of the things that you were talking about before, sorry, I did
You okay?
have a before you were talking about what was the second thing that you were most proud of again?
The Abby Martin meeting, the first thing was my
Oh,
brother
wait, wait,
and
okay.
being able
The
to, yeah.
autonomous, okay, the autonomous zones. So one thing that you mentioned was intentional living. Um, And I know that we were talking about in the pre-show about that, right? What
Right.
is this autonomous zones also associated with this intentional living? It sounds like a planned community. What's that all about?
Say that one more time.
This intentional living idea that you have, right? Yeah. Is that
Right.
tied to these autonomous zones? Did these autonomous zones function on intentional living plan, or is it something new?
It's something unique. I wouldn't say it's new. Intentional living at its base definition just means you're more conscious and aware and woke, to throw a buzzword in there, to the concept of how you how your environment affects you, and more importantly, how you affect your environment. Most people don't know, but the word economy actually meant to have such a knowledge of your environment and the methods of production that you did not waste. To economize meant that you reduced waste. Everything you did was to reduce waste, because if you reduce waste, you're automatically increasing productivity. And that was how the Greeks, the Romans, viewed, and everybody in that sector viewed economia. And so intentional living and intentional communities, but intentional living more specifically, is the recognition of economia, the recognition of how we affect and relate to our environment. And that doesn't start or stop with the external, trees, nature, the air, but how we relate with one another, socially, communally, interpersonally, and very intentional about it, being deliberate, being aware of how you drive the vehicle that is self, and
Okay.
where you're going
We'll
in
return
life.
to this topic in a moment, but the first half of the interview is really getting to know you as a person. The second half of the interview is really learning more about your work, right? So
Right.
I want to ask you now, some people, they have a certain way that they define themselves. They say, oh, I'm a socialist, I'm a communist, I'm a capitalist, whatever, right? Yeah. Do you have a particular ideology that you follow? I noticed on the page there was like a sunflower, maybe you're a green, right? Yeah, I met you through Robert Shields, who's a green.
Right.
Eco-socialist, I don't know. What is your, do you have a political ideology? Maybe not. I'm an anarchist. What about yourself?
Same. I'm an anarchist, a pure anarchist, not a this ANCAM cop, on cop,
Yeah,
anarcho
ANCAP.
cop, none of that shit. Just
Yeah,
a pure old fashioned uh, anarchist. No rulers. For those, and that's another thing. For those of you who don't know, your viewers probably know. But for people watching this later, anarchy just means no rulers. The most
yeah.
important part of that is theirs part. No rulers, not no rules. We would have law and rule in an anarchist society. We just wouldn't have rulers. And to further bring awareness to the verb, or how we say these and what these words actually mean, when we talk about a ruler in the form of a king, a queen, the monarchy, it's talking about the measurement for reality. That's why it's called a ruler, like a ruler, which is a measuring stick. A ruler of people is a measuring stick of how reality will function around them. If the ruler says off with your head tomorrow, guess what tomorrow's gonna bring? And almost nothing in nature can stop it, because the perceptions of the systems that we engage in that give or yield legitimacy to authority vested in strangers, a type of authority that only nature carries. uh, the ability to dictate uh, existence, to be a measuring stick for existence. So that, just to clarify that, I know a lot of people have that obfuscated.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Now, when you say that you're an anarchist, I'm glad you did provide some clarification, right? There's anarcho-capitalist, communists, right? All kinds of different, right, hybrids.
Right.
But is there anybody that's like influential to your thought, or are you really kind of like more kind of like, a lot of anarchists are independent minded, right? So, but maybe someone's been influential. For me, myself, like, I would say being American, right? I'm heavily influenced by Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, because that's who I know. I don't know about
Right.
activists from China or other countries, so that's what I know. But who's been influential to yourself, or is there?
The most, and this ain't even a hard question for me. If you haven't looked this man up, the man who needs no introduction, and I know that he is one of the most hated, Mr. Mark Passio, MARK PASSIO, over at whatonearthishappening.com. And you can also find him at another network of organizers who are all anarchists, over 70 of us, at the One Great Work Network.com. And Mark Passio, the reason why I respect him and the reason why he is one of, I don't just consider him a peer. I talk to him, so I don't consider him just a comrade. I consider him a mentor, because he has put forth an unreasonable, I'm going to use that word, not unbelievable is to say the least, but an unbelievable, unreasonable amount of information that is available for download on his website for free. All of it is anarchist. All of it is geared to, that's what the name of his, the first website I plugged was, What on Earth is Happening? Because if you ask that question and you use the scientific method to answer it, as he does and did, it becomes very clear. Like I said, I've been an activist for a very long time. And it wasn't until I found Mark's work that I was a focused activist. I wasn't engaged in arguments and conversations about the shape of the earth, other than to reiterate how it's not going to change anything in the regular everyday life. So it's really not as important as tyranny and boots on your chin. And I didn't engage in a lot of the other, what seems like activism, but really is just social confusion needing to work itself out for us to move forward, as if we have that kind of time when we don't. But Mark's work, it just, I mean, when people talk bad about Mark to me in person, everything they say about him is about how he delivers the truth. And I just don't have any respect for that, because the man never says anything bad about specific individuals. But when he talks about people not doing the activist work, not doing their part,
Well, I'm
being
interested in meeting on a number of levels, right? I'm interested in meeting as an anarchist. I'm interested in meeting him for his work. I'm interested in meeting because of the controversy. I want to learn so much about it. So I'm excited to learn about that. Okay, interesting. Now, within the, now we're going to move on to, wait, is there anything else? I think that's most of the questions about yourself. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the activism portion of the, so now the thing is that, what do you think are the most effective things that activists can do?
The most effective things, as far as I'm concerned, that activists can do is work on self. And almost anybody who is really doing this work will tell you that you need to work on self. If you are in a position where you've already worked on self, meaning you've done your deep shadow work, you've looked at yourself internally, to move forward with your activism, always employ the scientific method. Ask yourself a question: what do I want to do to be effective to bring more equity to the world? Then you ask another question: how do I go about doing that? Then you start doing the research. But the first thing people should do is define for themselves what an activist is. And for me, I define activism as life, as being an active participant in one's own life. And so there's a hierarchy to activism. Activist for self, because if you're not an activist for, if you're not sufficiently capable or in a position to take care of yourself, then you're not able to take care of other people as well. So activist for self, activist for family, activist for community, and activist for global host, the planet. And that is the order. There may even be more activists for galactic, for the galaxy, all kinds of shit that we as type 0 civilizations haven't even pondered yet. But that is literally the order: activist for self, activist for family, activist for community, and activist for planetary global host. And those are logical extensions of each other. It's very hard to be bad for your family when you have already done the work to be good for yourself. It's hard to be bad for yourself or for your family and for your community when you've done the work for yourself, and so on and so forth. Okay. So the scientific method, number one, and then the trivium method, which classically was grammar, logic, and rhetoric, which today we talk about it in computer jargon as input, processing, output. So if you start with the trivium and apply that to the scientific method and apply that to the incoming data that you're receiving, there is almost no way you can't end at a more realistic position through those mechanisms. And you can look these up. The trivium, I mean, if you look up the trivium method, it will give you a band called the trivium.
What is the trivium? What is it?
The trivium method was something that was talked about in Hermeticism, or is something that's talked about in Hermeticism. And
What is
when we talk
Hermeticism?
about
Uh-oh, we're going down the rabbit hole.
Hermetic, no, you're okay. Hermetic is a term that comes from a being that supposedly existed named Hermes Trismegistus. And Hermes Trismegistus, the Trismegistus part meant the thrice great. And this being was, followed around a lot, similar to Jesus, never claimed to be Jesus, never claimed to be God. But a lot of people think that this person, and the myth goes that this person, Hermes, was actually transformed into the god we know of in Greek mythology as Hermes, and the Egyptian god we know of as Thoth. So Thoth, Hermes, and Hermes Trismegistus are essentially the same dude, and they wrote a lot of stuff. But when we talk about the Hermetic principles, when we talk about Hermeticism, the reason why something is hermetically sealed is because of Hermes. This individual, this being, supposedly started like medicine, like our knowledge of medicine, our knowledge of science, our knowledge of the universe, basically. But when it comes to the trivium, it was realized as grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And people think that it was Hermes that came up with this, but Mark Passio tends to think that this is something that's much, much, much older. And I tend to agree because I've seen a lot of self-reflective meaning in existence, meaning there's certain stages that you can't get to without prerequisite knowledge or information, meaning we don't go light speed right now because there's a bit of information that we don't know, or maybe we think we can't do it. But until the steam engine and these forms of technology, there is a plateau that you can't reach unless you have this knowledge to move forward. And I tend to think that without the trivium, they may not have called it the trivium, but I think that the trivium method and the scientific method have been around since the dawn of man.
It's interesting
So
because you talked about them teaching what'd you say, grammar, logic, and
grammar, logic, and rhetoric.
rhetoric, right? They used
Right,
the three R's used to include rhetoric, but they don't include, right? Yeah, rhetoric in school anymore.
right. They took
But
all
yeah,
this out of school as late as the 1920s. You
I
could have
actually,
learned about the
I don't really
trivium.
like the way they teach logic either. They teach a set of bound rules, the word tautology, and then that's basically there's really not much more to your logic education. It's really
Right.
yeah. Anyways, I'm sorry to go off on my own thing, but let's keep on with exploring your stuff. So the thing is that some people, right, this part of the aim of this channel is to help educate people that are just learning to be activists. There's going to be people at different stages though, and there's this have over, I think, almost 100 interviews with different activists at
Hmm.
different points in their career, so you get to see how their answers change. But now the thing is that as you've been through different organizations trying to get help with the things that you've been trying to get addressed, right, you've tried to work with some organizations. Some organizations you'll find are more effective than others, or better able to handle the needs of the individual, but at the same time staying true to their mission. So what are some of the best practices that you've seen in organizations to make sure that people they actually take care of their members?
It's really difficult because I deal with a space of decentralization, and a focus on decentralization is relatively not a new concept, but a very new concept to people nowadays. Some of the practices that we're seeing, I do a lot of TikTok lives, and I go on TikTok, and there is a certain level of activism that is being done there. And
Cool.
the tools that I see emerging on TikTok are some of the best that I've seen. And it's really weird because the activism that's on TikTok is essentially, depending on what topic you're talking about, really
We gotta be
ineffective.
everywhere. We gotta be
Right.
everywhere.
We got to be everywhere. And that's the only reason why I got a TikTok. And I'm suppressed on there unbelievably, like everybody is who's talking about anything. And that's fine because I use it as an editing software, essentially, to put my videos other places as like quick ads about evolving seeds in our work. But they are centering the individual when the individual is expressing whatever it is. It could be an opinion, it could be an idea, it could be a thought process, it could be asking questions, whatever it is. They could even be somebody they're opposed to. In the most successful TikTok lives, activist spaces that I've been, they center the person that they're talking to, even if it's a bunch of people trying to get a person who's really racist, who seems to be very genuine in decolonizing and making themselves not or less racist. They center that person in a way that I've not seen. Like, it is palpable that they're not attacking this person. They're not being like, sometimes it does get heated when people get really like, when you can tell somebody's being disingenuous. But when the other side is being genuine and genuine, the panel, the people speaking on the panel, and the host are super focused on their actual assimilation of the information, and they are hyper focused on how they respond to them and how they respond back, because they are trying to essentially reprogram somebody's mind, which is one of the hardest things we can do. Like, I know with like altruist kitchen relief, they're very successful, and their feature that they do is they just do it. I don't even know how they do it. They're very transparent, and they get a lot of donations from all over the place because of how specifically transparent they are. But with TikTok, it being a more of a mental thing, it's really hard work and discouraging. But it's the specific way that it helps is by giving individuals who are genuinely interested in improving themselves the space to do so. And if people do that, if more, because when you look at the reason why Abby Martin met us is because we weren't the Red Cross, and because the Red Cross was already being interviewed by other journalists about what they were doing, and not including all the terrible shit that they were doing. So there's more of a realness to all of the type of activism you do when you are solutions focused. If you're out there arguing with people about the shape of the earth, sorry to break it to you, you're not doing activism. You're not an activist. And maybe you never claim to be, but I would also inform you that you're not making the world any better of a place either, or any more equitable or less equitable than it is right now, unless you're being mean about it, which means you're making it less equitable.
I feel you. I'm making this funny face because I was literally like protesting an event that Abby Martin was at like yesterday. So, but like, I like Abby, and it wasn't really Abby was the target, but it just comes in.
And I'm not saying people should engage in their own, right. And I'm not saying people should engage in their own discussions, debates, whatever. But with regards to what's equitable and what's going to get people actually in a better position, those conversations, body count, that's another one is big on TikTok. Body count, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah. So okay, let's. The thing is that as time has gone on, right? You've been active for a long time now. I think 40 years. You came awake at a young age, and you started getting involved in actual activity, also at a young age, right? Yeah. So now the thing is that from then to now, right? You're actually a mature, developed activist. I do recognize that, and I appreciate that so much. But has your perspective changed? And maybe there's people out there that are just becoming or thinking about becoming an activist or starting out, right? How has your perspective changed? What would you maybe send a message down? What would you tell people that are starting their journey?
That's a beautiful question, and I didn't have an answer for it until I kind of intuitively knew where you were going with that question, and I arrived at the answer right when you arrived at the end of the question, which is you gotta be okay with doing the right thing for the fucking sake of doing the right thing and getting absolutely fucking nothing for it. That's why this work is rarely done. I've given my last dollars for the bus to a family who was hungry and asking for money, and whether or not they were going to do drugs and all that other shit, I don't give a fuck about. I gave them that money. I gave them that money.
Yeah.
Because I know that I have to do what I have to do when I have to do it, which equates back to what I said, do the right thing because it's the right thing and not going to get shit for it. So when you do get something for it, it's beautiful. When you're recognized, it's beautiful. But you can't do it for those reasons, but you can never even expect that shit. Also, you can't do it with the end goal of actually seeing that change. There's a Taoist principle that says, he who plants a tree knowing that they will never sit under its shade has seen the beginnings of true spirituality. I replace spirituality at the end of that with activism. That's what activism is. Planting that tree. And that's why our tagline for Evolving Seeds is plant the seeds. because a lot of this we won't see. That's not going to happen in our lifetime. Well, because of people like you saying that shit and believing it. That's why it's going to take longer. And that's the only reason why it's going to take longer, aside from the naysayers, which they literally have a name. Aside from the naysayers, a lot of this stuff could happen within the next 10 years, as far as even infrastructure wise and, economically. But the type of stuff we're talking about, changing the individual, changing the methodologies by how we think, changing what we consume and how we consume it, those things can be done immediately. And not all of them. Like Evolving Seeds is, we are a plant-based, we make and distribute plant-based soap to generate money and funds for our activism. But we are aware that you just can't switch from a meat diet to a plant-based diet. But in the ways that you can maybe find out what products you're using right now that have tests on animals. Stop using those. That's not even a change in your diet.
Do you have any marketing programs for YouTubers like myself so I could help you sell your soap? Do you have any type of programs, like maybe a code or something that I could use?
I can make one.
Soap? All right, cool. We're gonna have more business going on. I like this guy. We're gonna do some business.
Right. Yeah. I will. Yes, I do, and we can make a what did I call it, a promo code.
I like that. We're gonna talk.
And that's the thing. Yeah. And my wife makes these soap. My wife and my kids, and they are supreme. If you go to the website, you'll be able to see we are low on stock now. But you'll be able to see just some of the work that we do. If you go on TikTok, you can see some of the work that we've done. My wife does custom soap,
though. You're also about you're more about soap. Like you're more about than selling soap. I also like the word seed. You said that earlier, and you have it's an acronym, right? Like, and the first word is scientific. So before you was talking about all that science talk, and I was like, I see where this guy's headed. He has the scientific mindset. So quite interesting, right? You started to get onto all that academic talk with the hermetically sealed and like going into the history. That was kind of cool. So you like to be brainy about stuff. That's cool. I'm mad at that. I could get that way too. It has value, and so interesting. So, all right.
And I try to tie it in. I try to make sure that it's not just to a lot of people who are not privy to these concepts or not initiated to these concepts. It might seem like I'm all over the place, but when I talk about these concepts, not with you necessarily, but in general for an audience, some of these concepts are tied in with other concepts that you do need a little prerequisite knowledge about. But
so the concept I'm really trying to understand here is the Evolving Seeds, right? Evolving Seeds has the soap selling component. It has the activism component. Is there more? Am I getting the whole thing? What is the whole EvolvingSeeds.com?
There's an Activism University component too. So and this is what I can even put it into. A lot of this I have on my website way more concise than when I talk. But our goal is to define and refine what activism is, and then become the activist hub. If I say, what's a tattoo? What's the hottest tattoo magazine? Because we also have an Evolving Seeds magazine. But if I say, what's the hottest tattoo magazine? I don't have any tattoos, but as a person with no tattoos, I can tell you, Inked, Tattoo. You know what I'm saying? If I tell you about Bud, if I say, what's the hottest Bud magazine? A lot of people say, well, say High Times. You know what I'm saying? What's the hottest activism magazine? The place where everybody knows to go to get hot activism content, not some dry, watered down, pale,
lies.
We hug the trees shit, but some really on the ground shit
by the mainstream media and the millionaires. Yeah.
Right. It doesn't exist. It does. Activism is such a precious and deliberate thing that there's so few of us doing it that it isn't this thing where you can see
we're multi-million, bro. We're overdue to meet because
there's no multi-million-dollar corporation.
100%. Yeah, not scam. I'm on the scheme.
100%. Look, there's no multi-million-dollar corporations paying people to tell the truth for the sake of telling the truth. That's why.
And there never will be. And the fact that
there never will be.
Learn to fund it themselves.
Right.
So, thanks for supporting the real ones. That's why I'm supporting Evolving Seeds, and I'm supporting my other actives out here too. I'm actually setting up my people for success. So I like that you take care of your own, and you're used to being.
Thank you for even having me.
I could see that. I could see that about you on his site. You'll see him celebrating other activists. It's not just about him, and that's I can see the maturity
because
the activism there.
Nobody can do all this work, and that's why one thing I'm gonna plug before I go. and to kind of bring everything home is on the ground activism. Nobody can do everything. And so if we all do our part, then we can make that difference. And not to compartmentalize activism, but to have the specific focuses. So one of the things that we've started, and we like to keep everything related, like plant the seeds, evolving seeds. The name of the sections are evolving seeds, roots, and branches. I came up with an activist arm of evolving seeds, which is Thorn, which is our Tyranny Hazards Organization Response Network. And to lead into what the reason why I brought that up is this specific program is designed to take a situation that is presented to any member in the network of activists, and they're not all affiliated with Evolving Seeds directly or Thorn directly, but that they are aware of us and we're aware of them. And to give you an example, there's 187 homeless people, roughly 187 homeless people, unhoused people in Corvallis, Oregon, who are being harassed by the police. They're being pushed out of the way, and they're using bulldozers to knock over the encampments. And my correspondent on the ground tells me that they're not checking to see if anybody's in these tents before they bulldoze the area. So what we did as soon as I got this information is I hit up my guys like you in journalists, and that's why I was asking you about if I met you through Conrad, and it was through Robert. But one of my friends, Conrad, does a YouTube show quite like yours, and I hit him up. I said, look, can you put the information out there? This is what's happening. And so the journalists go to it. The people who are doing the media content creations go to it. At the same time, we're hitting up our people who do mutual aid and donations fundraising. They go to it. At the same time, I hit up my sovereigns, my people who know common law. And I'm not talking about sovereign citizens. Sovereign citizen is a designation that the United States government gave or accepts as a designation for a group of people who claim that designation. But A, you can't be sovereign if you're a citizen, and B, you can't be a citizen if you're sovereign. So that's a misnomer. It doesn't exist. But my individuals who are sovereign individuals, which means it just simply means above rule, those individuals have a plethora of knowledge regarding law that contains the law that's in the system, but gives it from the outside look so you can understand how they use it against you and use it against them. So we have those individuals.
Yeah, about some other organizations right quick. Now, I think I've seen you at a Green Renaissance Sovereign Rights Movement meeting. Did I?
Say that one more time.
Did I see you at a Green Renaissance Sovereign Rights Movement meeting?
No, and I know that because literally I have aside. I'm stuck in when. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't me, but I was wondering when was it because I keep getting baffled on how I keep missing everything.
I got to look at the thing again. I think they're off and on with the invites. I think that I am getting the invites nowadays, but I'm actually unhappy about some of the leadership's decision to work with the Jimmy Dore clan, which actually I'm at war with. So that's quite unfortunate. But we're gonna see if we can work that out. I still want to be friendly with them. But there's other things going on. So we got to see how this works out. Yeah.
Right.
That's a whole nother timeline of story, but we're not going to really dip into that in the moment. But I am interested to see like where you're, who you're tied to and what these things mean, right? These other ties. So another thing that I was wondering about was this group called ARC. Now the thing is, I know Robert
Alliance
Shields
for Reason and Knowledge.
But it stands for something else. But in your case, it stands for like Autonomous Resource Kitchen or something.
Well, there's two. There's actually two ARCs out there. There's the Alliance for Reason and Knowledge, headed up by Robert Shields, and then there's the Altruist Relief Kitchen.
Yeah,
totally different letters.
Also, they just happen to use the same acronym because I thought maybe it was like a code. Maybe they're connected somehow. I didn't know. Maybe they're not connected.
Coincidence. I think they have a different .org or .us.
Okay.
But the Alliance for Reason and Knowledge is one.
I thought it was some coalition. I was like, these people have like a secret ARC organization everywhere,
all over the place, right?
Popping up. I was like waiting for that to happen.
Right. And there's no reason it wouldn't, because that's how these organizations are.
It would be fun. We'll do it just for fun. I got years in this game. We got time to do it. We got time to do whatever we want. I mean, we'll see.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway,
and the other ARC stands for Altruist Relief Kitchen, and that's who we were interviewed with, and that's the only other organization who knew who Abby Martin was when we did the interview. Lucid Del Mundo over at Altruist Relief Kitchen. They were in Syria, they were in Iraq, they are currently in.
Do you still talk with Abby?
I don't talk to her. I haven't talked to her in several months, but I do. I am in correspond. I have her number, and I have the ability to talk to her. I just because I actually want to see her do an interview with Mark Passio. That would just be like the bee's knees for me. That'd be popcorn in the night right there.
Set up a discussion panel.
Right, and that discussion panel. If my dream discussion panel is Abby Martin interviewing Peter Joseph, Mark Passio, and like somebody who's in the system, like Joe Biden, all three of them at the same time, so that people can clearly see the difference between solutions focused activists and people who get paid to lie to you. It could be Trump, it could be Biden, it could be Obama, it could be George Bush. I don't care. It could be Bill Clinton, whoever it is. Put them right next to people who are actually making the real difference, and the vast void becomes very clear. They only look okay around other assholes.
All right. So I'm glad you have your name on the screen, evolvingseeds.com. I'm checking the chat right here. I saw a couple people watching. I think they're off now. But is there any other like social media for people to follow you on? Are you on Twitter? Are you on like YouTube? Like any other
we are
places?
everywhere but Twitter and we had a page on Facebook. We got super hacked. Somebody was trying to sell a dog kennel to everybody I knew.
Okay. But
so,
you did.
No more Facebook.
What is it?
Say again.
TikTok. We heard about the TikTok earlier, right? Definitely check that out. It sounds
TikTok
like
at Evolving Seeds, soaps by Little Hands, and just to lay it out real fast, we have programs I call it cash for trash, to basically pay people to pick up trash. People go out, they see one of these sites that's next to a school or a Walmart shopping center that's just riddled with trash. Take, between 12 and 20 pictures, give a brief description of the area, traffic conditions, and anything that's huge that's in the site, couch. A lot of times there's a van chair for someone, specifically an Astro van chair.
Okay, what are your plans now that people have your information, right? Yeah, like where you like also producing content? What do you have planned for the future? You got anything coming up people should be right? Maybe a new soap line coming out. Maybe there's actually a some activism right thing coming up.
We have some new soaps being launched at the end of this month. And again, my wife does custom orders. So if you have a wedding, if you have birthdays, if you want something specific done, my wife and my children do that. As far as the activism goes, we do on February 16th. I totally thought it was yesterday. Like I was all prepared, got my notes and everything going. And on the 16th of next month, apparently, we have a big thing with Evolving Seeds, Women with Bows, which is a mutual aid organization, Red Heart Coalition, which is a huge mutual aid organization, and the generalstrike.us, which I had to plug because these people have 11,000 plus people signed up to do a general strike, striking against basically all the ways we engage in this system. And those groups we're going to have a panel discussion about all of our next step, because as a decentralized group of networks, we do have very specific goals in mind. So
I want to ask right quick, who's part of that panel?
I don't know her last name. I got her name is Amanda Nan. Okay. I don't know who's coming from Women with Bows. So that Nan covers Red Heart Coalition. Michael Morris is going to be presenting Evolving Seeds. And Day, I don't have a last name on Day either.
But no YouTubers are attending. It's really basically just activists from the ground.
Yes, there is one YouTuber that is going to be there, but his name escapes me because I literally just got in contact with this person a couple days ago. But I can tag it somewhere. But this panel is supposed to be on February 16th, and it's going to be pretty provocative because we've done all of the discussions and arguing with the world that can be done. And now we kind of see that everybody who's going to be doing this work to improve life on this planet, we're going to have to do it without the help of those who don't give a fuck.
Okay.
That's just what it is.
You got any allies in New York?
Allies in New York?
Yeah. Because I find your work, right? Yeah. Like, I think there's like other groups that are doing a similar thing, and I think it would be great for the migrants. They're right now like getting kicked out of the shelter. They could really use some of the different. I saw your website, Evolving Seeds. It's not just about that. It's also about survival. So yeah, I think you had some tips for people that were homeless and stuff, or in camps.
Oh yeah.
Stuff.
Just like really simple tips for especially inner city homelessness. And I don't know what's going on with the landscape right now as far as people being able to donate plasma and stuff like that. It's just bad. But one major tip that I give people is to, while you're, if you're in an unhoused position, uh, but you do have a cell phone, use that cell phone to gain all of the knowledge you can about your situation, about the world, and the avenues by which you can improve yourself, uh, regardless of if you can improve your economic, social situation, you can improve yourself. And rooftops. I don't in a rural area it's a little bit harder, but if you're in a major city, rooftops are a refuge. A lot of times the machines, the air conditioners and the heaters, they're on the roof and they're generating heat just from operating, and there's a different temperature up there. You are almost never seen by anybody, and the higher the roof, the more chance you have of even. I stayed on a roof for 8 months and literally had my toiletries and my hygiene material set up. I had a full blown curtain, had me a mat. Like I didn't see. I've been homeless 76% of my life, and I've never slept on the ground once. I've never had to ask anybody for money, and I've never had to ask anybody for food. I literally am always, because a lot of times my activism didn't allow for a full-time job, and I always knew that sacrificing myself for capitalism, when I could do the same amount of work to sacrifice myself against it, I chose, and I live with my choice, and I love my choice.
I have significant
I
times of
save so much
homelessness
time and
myself,
money not
so
fucking around with capitalism.
yeah, I have significant times of homelessness myself, so we probably have
Yeah,
shared worldview and shared empathy in some very similar ways. I think that I see similarities myself, but we might just be kindred spirits. There's a lot of people who came out of this system that
right.
didn't make it or went in an opposite, so I can't say it's all good, but I think overall there's an empathy down here. What people that aren't better than anybody else. So, but respect your work, man. I think you're very special, and I do appreciate your work. So, there's some
Thank you.
unemployment
I'm gonna say
benefits.
one more thing in regards to what you said, is that literally I've been saying this in my head lately a lot more, so I know it's becoming more and more important, is that the unhoused population, the poverty belt at the bottom of the social ladder, is the most important belt to the most important space to operate in activism, because A, we're all on the way there, and B, those people already have the least to lose. They're the most ready to listen. They're the most ready to act a lot of times. I mean, but we got to start at that position. So I appreciate you for having me, man.
Yeah, this media network. We're definitely going to talk further about that. Yeah. So I'm going
For
to end
sure.
the stream right now.
Because we didn't even touch on this intentional communities and all that. We got some
I'm,
work. We got
I'm
some
gonna
work
tell
to
you
do.
right quick about. I'm gonna tell you right quick about that before. But let me just end the stream, and I just want to talk to you about that